Harvey Weinstein has now been sentenced to 23 years in a New York state prison. It is the culmination of the case that fueled the Me Too movement. So when the sentencing came out, the news came out yesterday, what did you guys think?
Was I the only one cheering? Like this?
Cheering, but I was really surprised at the 23 years. I know his defense team was arguing for 5, and I thought, you know what, maybe 5, 10. Never did I think 23. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was definitely felt like I had complicated feelings for it. I didn't cheer. I felt like this is the right decision for this man to get a serious sentence. People who have done far less have had far worse sentences. But to say that I felt happy is not, I didn't feel happy. Like, I feel like Farrah Khan, she's a frontline anti-sexual violence worker. She's right here in the city, and she's a very thoughtful individual. She tweeted this, and it really resonated with me. She said, "A reminder, sexual violence will not end with the prison system. We can feel affirmed when someone who has caused great harm is being held accountable while still asking for a transformative way forward that is not rooted in violence." And I think, because there was a lot of tweets going around, I think yesterday when the sentencing came down, being like, we can't wait to hear about how he's treated in the prison system. And there's a kind of like, I don't know how to feel. All I know is that there's more and more talk around restorative justice, especially with sexual assault victims, which looks more like people trying to make sure that the perpetrator understands what they did and moves forward. And this is a man who still doesn't even think he did anything wrong. And that, to me, is the most sad. I mean, there's so much sadness through this case. Obviously, the victim stories are incredibly damaging and devastating. But I do feel like there's something missing in this that is not feeling like it's actually adding up to a complete vindication.
I'll tell you why I was cheering. Because the missing piece in the puzzle for so many women has been that there has been this very seemingly high threshold for victims to be heard and believed in the judicial system, and that there has been such a lack of criminal accountability in the justice system. And it's like, what kind of evidence do we need to provide? What kind of perfect victim do I have to be to have my perpetrator actually see justice? So not only was he put to court facing these, out of 80 plus, maybe 90 women, this actually came down to only 2 women having a story that the justice system felt would stick. And there were 90 plus women, and 2 women's cases were seen before this court. And the fact that because of those 2 women's stories being backed up by so many others, the maximum exposure he was receiving in terms of a sentence was a potential 29 years. He got 23. And you know why I cheered? Because he could have gotten 5. But the message was, we are not only giving you 23 years, which is really encroaching on the max 29, but the judge chose to make that sentence consecutive. The judge could have said, you get 20 for this and 3 for this, but you can do them concurrently, which means actually 17 years. The judge says, consecutive. You do 20 years first, and then you start the 3 for the next. And I'll tell you, if there's nothing more powerful than someone who thinks, could my case actually see vindication in court? Could the court actually believe me and make my perpetrator pay? This answer is yes. And for that, I cheered.
All right, so can I just, I'm going to share a story that, to be honest with you, I've only shared with close friends and my husband. I grew up in corporate Canada, and as I was climbing the so-called corporate ladder, I was walking down the hall to a very powerful meeting, and there were a group of men behind me, and one of them slapped me on the bottom. And I turned around, and I looked at them to see who did it, and it was pretty easy to figure it out because he was right behind me. And I looked, and I said, what just happened? And the men all said, I didn't see anything. Did you see something? I didn't see anything. And I was furious. But I was young. I was naive. I was insecure. And I didn't really tell anyone in order to make a difference. It happened once, and then it happened again. And interesting to note, the same reaction from a different person while I was standing there, and it was at a social event, and turned around, and the one guy did it, and the other guy said, I didn't see anything. And I felt this collaboration, and I can't tell you how incensed I was. Today, it is a very different environment, and I applaud the 23 years like you do. So what came flooding back to me was, what can I do differently? And to be honest, I didn't know I was going to be on. And so I haven't shared this story. And, you know, there's a part of me, old school, that would not have shared it. But I think it's so important to share it because I think it's important that people stand up and they say, this is not okay. This may not go to court. It may not have bordered on sexual harassment to the extent that those women experienced. But to me, it was still a violation.
It was
a
wrong.
violation, and it was wrong.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
It's
thanks.
amazing, Patty. And what's interesting is the other men and their reactions, because it's not just about what you can do now in sharing it and empowering others, but what about those people that just stood by, right, and let it happen? And the question is also, so if a titan like Harvey Weinstein can fall, right, what happens now?
Yeah.
To others, right, who might have perpetrated these kinds of things through the years? Are there, you know, people in Hollywood and other places right now, powerful people that are shaking their boots, going, well, if this guy can go down, you know, what happens now?
Symbolic.
It's symbolic.
And you know, as a woman at the time, no, I still am, but at the time, I remember thinking, he's going to come into my office and apologize. He is going to come in and apologize. And the apology never happened. On the same day that we heard this, I actually randomly in the underground, the one individual that said, I didn't see anything, I saw him.
Really?
I saw him, and I'm not making this up. And I looked at him, and I squinted, and he looked at me and kept walking fast.
Wow.
And it's just interesting. It brought back a whole host of emotion. But I'm just hoping that all women stand up for themselves, that they do have a voice, and you can express it. Yeah.